I cried after watching Nosferatu 2024 and faced my dark desires from childhood, BDSM cravings, fear, and shame. I just want to feel normal. This is a rather lengthy post, I apologize. Trigger warning: distressing themes. Watching Nosferatu 2024 genuinely shattered me, and I found myself in tears after viewing it. Since then, I have been in deep contemplation. I truly do not wish to desire what I yearn for. I genuinely despise my cravings. This is not something new. I have longed to break free from this for ages. I intensely wish to simply be normal, as my sexual inclinations are not reproductive, but rather destructive, related to BDSM, particularly from the submissive and masochistic perspectives. I do not believe a rational, healthy, typical man would perceive me in the same light if he discovered my interests. Moreover, those who share this inclination do not precisely align with my principles and ethics. For instance, I identify as extremely heterosexual, deeply committed to monogamy, and adhere to traditional beliefs. In fact, I am still a virgin and have a religious background. I simply want to eliminate this mental burden and lead a typical life. Over the past month, I have engaged in extensive introspection and recalled several memories. When I was around 11 or 12 years old, my mother opted to begin working, which meant I would be home alone after school from about 2 p.m. until around 7 p.m. I would often feel extremely frightened being alone at home, even with the television on. However, one day I discovered that masturbating would suddenly alleviate my fears completely, leading to it becoming a habit not solely for pleasure, but because afterward, I would no longer feel afraid. As I aged, and I realized this might sound inappropriate, but to clarify, it became easier to cope with being alone at home if I envisioned a ghost or a demon engaging with me in a sexual manner. It no longer felt frightening. As a child, I always found myself drawn to dark themes. I loved watching horror shows and films, as well as crime documentaries. My parents enjoyed them too, amusingly. I seemingly had a more morose mindset, and as I matured, discovering music, art, and cinema as an emo-goth teenager only intensified that inclination. I recall when I was 12 or 13, having this peculiar daydream about a boyfriend who would kiss me as he plunged a knife into my chest, expressing profuse apologies for having to do so. It had something to do with possession or jealousy, though I cannot recall the specifics. What I am trying to convey is that the stabbing was not motivated by animosity. It feels quite strange to write this out. At 15, I entered my first relationship, which was entirely a long-distance romance across different continents with someone merely a year older than myself. I was craving love immensely. Like many young people, I was fond of him because we had similar musical tastes and interests. I was infatuated with music. It was my entire existence, as it was for him, since he is a musician. I had been quietly harboring feelings for him for about 8 to 9 months, but I never confessed my feelings until he revealed that he liked me more than a friend, and we became official. We were incredibly compatible, yet he experienced a tumultuous childhood, similar to mine in other respects, witnessed domestic violence at home, had an alcoholic father who cheated, a verbally abusive and depressed mother, and was molested by a cousin during childhood. He also associated with peculiar friends, one of whom openly aspired to become a serial killer. This individual was diagnosed with a mental illness and was receiving disability due to it. All of this had a significant impact on him. Despite everything, I was blissfully happy. I had finally found someone who matched my teenage ideal of love, and he reciprocated my feelings. I admired him greatly and initially placed him on a pedestal. He once described himself as an atheist, and he confessed that my influence led him to embrace faith and move away from thoughts of violence and hatred. Ironically, I started as the stereotypical crazy girlfriend, while he was more composed and detached. However, after about 2 years, particularly after a lengthy breakup during which I dated someone else and other men began to show genuine interest in me, the dynamic shifted dramatically. He became immensely possessive and obsessed, which only deepened my affection for him. At any rate, he had interests that ventured into troubling territories: blood and knife play, bondage inflicting pain, consensual non-consent, and necrophilia, though he never referred to me using degrading terms like bitch, preferring sexual language instead. He gradually introduced these elements, some of which puzzled me, but I genuinely wanted to make him happy and was unaware of how relationships were supposed to function, so I went along with everything. Over time, I also began to derive enjoyment from these experiences. And it was not as if he was imposing anything upon me. Whenever I expressed hesitance, he was willing to back off, although I personally felt as if I was disappointing him and not fulfilling his needs. As I mentioned, eventually, I too started to relish these activities. Nevertheless, during arguments, he occasionally referred to me in derogatory terms and expressed a desire to strike or choke me. This occurred perhaps a handful of times, and he was always exceedingly apologetic afterward, often immediately after uttering such remarks. I was not blameless either, as I similarly delivered hurtful comments that likely had lasting effects on his self-esteem and psyche, which I genuinely regret. When we reconciled, I often felt compelled to seek or request more pain during role plays as a means of atoning for my harsh words and demonstrating my true affection, desire, and attraction to him. Now, I reflect on his comments during our arguments and ponder whether my acceptance and participation in those behaviors played a role. If one permits another to spank and strike them or use derogatory terms during intimacy, and if they exhibit submission in response to displays of power, how can that dynamic not carry over into regular life situations? That said, we both felt a profound and intense connection. We shared nearly identical interests, humor, morals, perspectives, and values. Even our writing styles were similar. A quote from Wuthering Heights accurately captured our relationship at the time: "He is more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be, and if all else remained and we were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure to myself, but as my own being." Eventually, I drifted apart from him as reality intervened, and our relationship concluded after several years, over a decade ago, when I declined to accept him back for the umpteenth time after he left. I had started to realize that other men with stable lives were showing interest in me, and I craved something genuine while he was not serious about his education or pursuing a career. The initial few times he left following arguments were incredibly traumatic for me, but after enduring this pattern over several years, I grew emotionally exhausted, unaffected, and ultimately moved on. During one of our lengthy separations, I entered an in-real-life relationship, and we engaged in typical teenage make-out sessions a few times, which sufficed for me. I did not require anything extreme. The mere sensation of a man's body pressing against mine, coupled with the knowledge that I was the physically weaker partner unable to genuinely resist, was enough in those moments. It is not that I cannot achieve pleasure without imagining those scenarios, but the experience is fundamentally different, and the desire always lingers at the back of my mind. I feel as though I perpetually yearn for heightened intensity, passion, rawness, and vulnerability. On a scale of 1 to 10, I seem to require things to be elevated to an 11 in nearly every aspect of life. It is well known that any act of choking carries a significant risk of serious harm or even fatality. If someone is calling you derogatory names while being intimate, they are unlikely to respect you or view you positively in non-sexual contexts, right? I do not want to have these desires. I fear they will result in a loss of respect and potential abuse within a relationship or marriage. I aspire to be normal, rational, healthy, and to move towards the light rather than being drawn into the darkness. Why do I feel so extraordinarily unusual, and how can I mend myself? I do not wish to crave any of this. I feel a profound sense of disgust and shame. I am unsure if it is pertinent, but I was recently diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, accompanied by some traits of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. I have been on non-stimulant medication for approximately 6 months, but it has not altered this aspect of my identity in any way. By the way, I do not consume pornography or anything similar, so this does not stem from a pornography addiction. Story 2. I was mistaken for staff at my own charity event until the charity director revealed I was actually the keynote speaker. Crazy. I have a vague understanding that there is a tradition of setting the scene before these posts, but I believe it will be more engaging if the specifics are revealed as relevant. Additionally, this incident occurred some time ago, so it won't be word for word accurate, but I will strive to be as precise as possible. I have also intentionally modified or obscured a few details for the sake of peace, though everything changed retains a similar level of significance. Why am I sharing this? A. I am experiencing insomnia tonight. B. I was invited back this year, prompting memories of an event that took place last summer. C. Why not? I hope that my perplexing experience will bring a smile to someone. My story begins with me, male, in my 30s, smoking a cigarette in a parking lot next to a hotel. I had never visited this location before. In fact, I had never been to this state prior, which left me a bit overwhelmed even after finally locating my destination. I was trying to gather myself and concentrate before entering the building, but this was proving difficult. I was not particularly looking forward to the task ahead. Lost in thought, I noticed a very loud, rather petite young woman in her 20s, even with high heels, looking at me expectantly. We shall refer to her as Joyful. Joyful, what are you doing? The tables are arranged in a diamond shape, not evenly. This must be addressed. The guests will arrive any moment. Joyful, what is wrong with you? Grabbing my arm, she begins half pulling, half dragging me into the building. We have very important individuals attending. People from all over the globe. This will not suffice. You will humiliate us. Me attempts to interject utterly fails at this point. We had passed check-in, gone through multiple double doors and corridors, and arrived at the entrance of an imposing auditorium. Joyful continues, what I need you to do is reposition these tables here, here, and here. She further elaborates at great length regarding the desired setup of the room. At this moment, it seems appropriate to make the first of a couple of notes about myself. I was wearing a black suit. In fact, it was a fairly expensive one, not that it matters, as I possessed the general appearance of a garden gnome that became romantically involved with a Valkyrie. I have a beard, heavy-set features, and an extremely broad yet not particularly tall frame similar to every mover, door security personnel, or general handyman. The assumption that I was there to assist was promptly established, often clarified with, I'm happy to help if I can, but I don't work here, have no authority, and I am technically one of the guests. Therefore, the situation was not unfamiliar and not overly troubling. The next part was somewhat odder. Joyful finally concludes her detailed explanation. Me, I'm truly sorry, but I'm not a member of the staff. I don't think they would appreciate me rearranging their furniture. Joyful, I don't require excuses. Just get on with it. We are compensating you generously, so do as I instruct. I am awaiting someone from Britain who is extremely significant to the event. Me, excuse me. Joyful, why are you apologizing? Me, are you expecting the speaker for this charity event? Joyful, that is none of your concern. She snaps her heel and storms off. Just get to it. At this moment, I was rather perplexed. Primarily, as the bouncer from the New York M&M store once observed, you sound exactly like someone from Mary Poppins. I also have a distinctly British manner of speaking, using sorry as an exclamation as often as anything else. I'm so British that I have been known to say hello when surprised. I would have assumed that this would have at least prompted a small question in her mind regarding my identity and purpose for being there. However, this subtlety in my speaking style was evidently overlooked. This left me with a couple of dilemmas. One was what approach to take regarding the chair situation. The second was whether I should approach her again, though I was somewhat apprehensive because she had referred to them as important, a term subject to interpretation. Lastly, I was completely unsure of my location again. The third issue was swiftly resolved when a very kind cleaning lady approached me and asked if I required assistance. I was uncertain how to respond and simply asked if she could direct me to the front desk. Just as I was arriving there, the CEO of the charity organizing the event hurried over to introduce herself in person and thank me for attending. A few colleagues, whom we both recognized mainly from video calls, soon joined us, which allowed me to forget about the chair concern. That was until Joyful ahem. What do you think you are doing? Group everyone halts their conversation and turns to face her. Joyful, those tables remain unmoved, and as you can see, our guests have arrived. I want to speak to your manager. I want them to know how much you have disappointed us. I demand a discount and an apology. Group looks bewildered. Me looks embarrassed. To be fair, my natural demeanor is to feel that I should have resolved the matter sooner. Joyful grabs my arm and starts dragging me toward reception while loudly calling for the event's manager. Charity Director Joyful, what on earth are you doing? Please release Lord Me. Room falls silent, or at least it felt that way. Joyful Lord Me. Charity Director, yes, Lord Me has come from Charity to be the keynote speaker. Turns to me. I'm terribly sorry, I cannot apologize enough. Me raises hand. It's fine. I understand how stressful these large events can be. Joyful, staring in disbelief. Director, anyway, turns back to the group, creating space for me to join, which I did. Joyful, wait. What? Why are you pretending to be the speaker? Group looks back at her in unison. Joyful, this is absurd. I'm going to find your manager. Director, no, Joyful. This genuinely is Lord Me. Joyful, why didn't you mention that sooner? Me, you didn't really allow me the opportunity. Joyful, but you should have. Me, that's not really my style. I tend to be quiet and a bit nerdy. Joyful, but look at you. Me, thanks. This last part is as close to verbatim as I can recall. Even as a man in his 30s, that stung. Director Joyful. With me now. At this point, they stormed off and vanished. A few more points about me. I specialize in a particular type of charity work and have been fortunate to speak internationally about research, best practices, and how to foster a more equitable society for situations that can impact anyone, regardless of their background, financial status, or beliefs. Thus, being a keynote speaker is not unusual for me, though I don't particularly relish this aspect of my job. Furthermore, I genuinely hold the title of Lord. Do you know what that entails? It implies precisely three things. 1, an ancestor of mine accomplished something that prompted the crown to confer a title upon them. 2, I happen to be the eldest male descendant for however many generations that has followed. 3, my father has passed away. That is it, no wealth, no exclusive schooling. Just a trivial detail that seems to captivate Americans. I should note that I actively conceal this when speaking at home in the UK, as it often has the opposite effect. I did not encounter Joyful for some time afterward. I pondered whether she had either been dismissed or had gone into hiding. I had already resolved to ensure that there would be no lasting negative implications for her, as these events truly are stressful. That turned out not to be necessary. After delivering my speech and listening to the other main speakers, I excused myself for a few minutes to the back room to collect myself. Okay, that may be a bit exaggerated, but I always require a few moments of solitude between speaking and mingling at lunchtime when people inevitably want to engage in conversation. Joyful was sitting there. Me, oh hello, how is the event progressing? Joyful, It appears to be going smoothly. I just need to ensure lunch arrives punctually. Awkward silence. Joyful, I sincerely apologize for mistaking you for someone else. I should have recognized who you were. Me, why? Joyful, it's impolite. Me, why? Joyful, it's not very organized. I believed I had memorized everyone. I can't believe I overlooked the main speaker. I had all the photographs and everything. Me, photographs. Joyful, yes, you were all requested to submit photos for the program. Me opens the program. For anyone questioning why there was one present, you've clearly never attended an event like this. These things are everywhere. Points to the charity logo where a face should be. I didn't send you a picture, I completely forgot. Joyful, you. What? Why didn't your secretary send one? Me laughs. Yes, you were coordinating directly with me. I simply forgot. Joyful, what? Me, yep, a tiny yet impactful charity. And being organized with such matters is not my forte. Joyful begins to laugh. So I didn't stand a chance then? Me, nope. We all laugh. Joyful faced no negative consequences and was presented with a lovely bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine during the event. I became quite merry at the evening celebration on their tab and was grateful to be part mythical creature, as my hangover was far less severe than that of my drinking companions or most of the top minds in the field. I hope this amusing little anecdote brightens someone's day, and now I shall attempt to get some sleep. Story 3. After 5 years as roommates, my best friend finally confessed she slept with my toxic ex just before reconnecting. OMG. This is going to be a lengthy post, and I apologize in advance for any grammar issues. There is just so much to convey, so I'm typing as my thoughts flow. I am a 23-year-old female and have been living with my best friend, another 23-year-old female, since our freshman year of high school. We have been friends for approximately 7 to 8 years and have shared living space for about 5 of those years. Throughout our friendship, we experienced one significant fallout. At 17, I was involved with a toxic individual, and during one drunken night at a pool party after our breakup, an argument ensued when he showed up to provoke me. The situation escalated to everyone becoming physically involved, with her now ex-partner damaging her car, resulting in chaos all around. In my youthful ignorance, I reconciled with him the following day. Understandably, she chose to end our friendship, especially since he had hit her during the confrontation, which she found utterly unacceptable. We were all intoxicated and instigating each other, resulting in a messy situation. Fast forward to roughly 6 months later, she reached out, expressing how we had both matured and wishing to restore our friendship. It is crucial to introduce a character for this story. Let's call him Alex. Alex was the person to whom I lost my virginity at 15 while he was 19 at that time. I surrounded myself with individuals who lied about their age and misrepresented mine as 18. Shortly after, he learned my true age and ended things. A couple of months later, he contacted me with a vague proposition, essentially saying, "If you won't tell, I won't." And at that stage, I was highly toxic, insecure, and not guided by my parents, carrying significant trauma. As you can see from my pattern of behavior, I did not make wise choices. This relationship persisted until I turned 22, where we would intermittently see one another and carry on sexual encounters. He represented the core issues I faced with my boundaries as a woman. The relationship was extremely toxic, and I found myself in tears every time I was intimate with him, as I was harming myself without realizing it. An incident occurred when he was sexually involved with an old acquaintance of mine. We had not been close for some time, but she knew he was off limits, and he instructed her to lie to me while simultaneously deceiving me and having unprotected relations. When I discovered this, I confronted both of them, and they both lied. Subsequently, when the girl cut ties with me, the whole truth emerged. Unfortunately, my own pride prevented me from severing ties with him, leading to a continued relationship long after the drama had subsided. This only scratches the surface of the chaos I endured with Alex. Around the time of this incident, my best friend re-entered my life, wanting to reconcile our friendship. We even got matching tattoos, and now, several years later, we are roommates, navigating life together. I am now, at 23, coming to terms with my queerness and sexuality, having abstained from sex for nearly a year. I have been working hard on personal development, striving to become a better individual. About 3 weeks ago, I had a dream where my best friend and Alex were intimate, which left me feeling hurt and angry, especially since, in the dream, my best friend was dismissive of my emotions. Upon waking, I mentioned the dream to her while we were showering, and she casually brushed it off, labeling it as an insecurity dream, saying she has those too. Later that evening, during lunch, she dropped a bombshell while we were not friends. She had been intimate with him one drunken night while under the influence of Xanax. Not that this excuses it, just a week prior to reaching out to me to restore our friendship. She uttered something like, "Doing that made me think of you even more," which struck me as odd. I was in shock and deeply hurt. Having consumed margaritas, I honestly wanted to flip the table over and throw the entire pitcher at her, but I maintained my composure since we lived together, share bills, split grocery expenses, and care for her foster sister. I was taken aback but assured her of my desire to work on our relationship, needing time to process this information. For the next 2 days, I was in turmoil, crying and feeling depressed, barely eating. The following day, she invited a girl over, engaging in sexual activity and laughing while I was struggling with my emotional state, which I found incredibly insensitive. At the very least, she could have acted remorseful. We worked together, making it hard for me to look her in the eyes, and I sensed she was almost irritated by my reaction. I felt the urge to remove myself entirely, reflecting on all the times I had interactions with him after confiding in her. This included instances where I vented about him or had him over to our shared homes multiple times without her ever saying anything. It feels as if each time I needed her support concerning him turned into a facade, and looking back at her reactions or the advice she offered, it was always dismissive, as if she were eager to steer away from the topic. Even in our current home, she remained silent when I invited him over. I felt aggrieved and ashamed. After 2 days, we finally talked, and I expressed my frustrations. Her responses felt belittling and condescending. I highlighted that the deception was most painful, particularly knowing she invited him into our shared home while I was unaware. I made it clear that had I been aware, I would have avoided him entirely, yet here I was, continuously violated while oblivious. My experience of being taken advantage of is far more serious than her desire to deceive me to protect herself and maintain our friendship. Her justification was that she believed I would have continued seeing him regardless, which baffled me. She attempted to downplay her responsibility for her actions. Ultimately, her apologies did not resonate with me, and I found her reaction to my anger unsettling. I informed her that I did not wish to engage in petty exchanges or harbor resentment, as that would not lead us forward. I tried to bury my feelings, hoping to rise above the situation because I care deeply for her and have built my life around our relationship. A couple of weeks later, we argued following a night out because I felt unwell and did not want to visit Waffle House. I sought a compromise, noting that I was still hungry, yet I really did not feel good, leading to further conflict. When I attempted to address the argument later, I realized I had accumulated resentment due to her selfish tendencies. She often calls others out for their behavior, and at one point, I decided to do the same, probably not in the most appropriate manner, resulting in her declaring she would not renew the lease with me. I hung up on her. "Tell me, is this not incredibly messed up? I apologize for the jumbled writing and grammatical errors, but I hope the message is clear."